Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are GRID, Gaming Revolution for International Development, and we are in the business of revolutionizing the practice and effectiveness of international development with video games. I am Mariam Adil, the founder of GRID. I'm also an aspiring development practitioner at the World Bank and a graduate student for the IDS program at the Elliott School. My team?
Hi, my name is Caroline Bailey. I'm a content developer for GRID, and I'm also a graduate student of development at the Elliott School here at GW.
My name is Mohammed Abdul Rahim. I am a video game developer for GRID and also the founder of GW Game Developers, a student organization on campus for the development of video games. I am a computer engineer in C's.
My name is June. I'm yet another video game developer of GRID. I'm a graduate student in computer science, and I'm also a member of GW Game Developers.
All right. So, Gaming Revolution for International Development. We revolutionize the practice and effectiveness of international development with video games. But who are these games for? They can be for three types of audience: development professionals, development students, and most importantly, our beneficiaries of international development, or the poor people. And all three types are catered by different types of games. One thing that we want to highlight already, 4 months of inception, and we already have our first game launch on April 28th in Bangladesh with the World Bank. We also have an expert panel of mentors backing us up from the World Bank, Google, and GWU. We go by the quote, "Tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand."
So before we get into our product, we want to talk a little bit about the context and lay it out for you all. So what is international development? This can have a lot of different meanings for different people, but for us, international development is the process, global agenda of fighting poverty and all of the related effects that come with it, and how those affect marginalized communities in developing countries. So who are the key players in this international development community? There are lots, and we think of multinationals like the World Bank, the IMF. We think of bilaterals like the US government, who gives money through USAID, and those are the donors. Then we think about NGOs as our prime implementers, both international NGOs and local. And then there's the academic side, so universities and think tanks. So what's the size of this sector? Just to give you all a little idea, the World Bank has about 12,000 projects in 172 countries. And again, they're just one player in this giant international development community. The 2010 contributions to international development, the World Bank was about $450 billion, the US about $38 billion, and NGOs about $2.4 billion. And again, these are just a few of the players in the large community. So when we talk about GRID and we talk about international development, we like to think of it as these two pieces. There's the science of international development, which is created mainly here in Washington and presented in books and toolkits and things like that. But then there's the art of development, because inherently development is a human process and requires human interaction. So there are things that you have to face out in the field, like political constraints, cultural clashes, resource constraints. So we feel that GRID is the bridge between these two fragments. The fragments are the problem, and GRID is the solution, this learning bridge between the science of international development and the art of international development.
Building off of that, we have a theory of change. There's an interesting statistic that I have for you. There are 1 billion poor people in the world today, but then there are also 1 billion people playing video games for at least 1 hour every day. What does that mean? There's a huge challenge of fighting poverty, but then there's also this huge potential in leveraging video games for this purpose. And so our theory of change focuses on the fact that we're going to have GRID games that are going to encourage experiential learning and the capacity building and awareness of people involved in international development. And that eventually leads to better projects, better implementation, and better monitoring and evaluation of projects. And that leads to better development, both internationally and locally. And what does that lead to? Poverty reduction. That's our theory of change.
So I'm going to be talking about our first game, which is called Randomania. We are creating it for the Strategic Impact Evaluation Fund within the World Bank, and we already have a $10,000 contract within the World Bank. The game's name comes from a technique within impact evaluation called randomized controlled trials, and we are going to show you a demo of the game right now. So here is a sneak peek look at Randomania. This is the first demo you are seeing right now, and it's the first time we're showing it in the public. So here's the title screen. As you can see, the letters that spell out the name of the game are all animated individually, all uniquely. It spells out the name Randomania, the art of randomization. A few more details. This game will run on PC, Mac, and Linux. Here is the character select screen. So when you click on a character, you get their bio. You choose the character that you associate the most with. After doing that, we move into the campaign select screen, which is coming up right here. You could choose an education campaign or the health campaign. So let's say you choose the health campaign. You're right now in a conference room in Bangladesh. You're talking to ministers and secretaries about how to pitch an impact evaluation, specifically targeting deworming and how to deal with that. So you're asked to consider very critical issues in designing this sort of impact evaluation. And the way the game works is, after getting the narratives from all these characters, seeing all their animation, learning their personalities, you're going to be given a menu screen, and right now you're going to be asked which of these issues is critical for this scenario. So let's say spillovers, which is the correct decision in this case. You're told it's correct, but then it goes even further. It's going to ask you to talk even more about that, just to make sure you truly understand why you made that decision, that you didn't choose it just arbitrarily. So let's talk about the nature of spillovers. Let's say you make the wrong decision as of right now. The game tells you it's wrong, but it also tells you why it's wrong. So here we're going to be asked for yet another issue to consider, let's say cost and sample size. And you can see how the game will flow. It's very much based on, here's the scenario, here's what you do with it, and you have to make the decisions. The game is going to come out on April 28th for the Strategic Impact Evaluation Fund in Bangladesh. Thank you.
So now that you've seen our product, let's talk a little bit about the impact. What's it going to do? So just taking Randomania as an example, this game, like we said, is going to be launched on April 28th in Bangladesh with one workshop through CEIF. And in that one workshop, there'll be 150 players of the game. 150 World Bank staff will be trained through using this game. Each one of those staff has an average of 2 projects apiece. So that's 300 projects. And then each World Bank project has an average of 1,000 beneficiaries. So that's 300,000 beneficiaries benefiting from one game in one workshop. But let's think about it over a year. So in a year, we could do relatively 4 workshops, 1 per quarter. And so if we do the math, that's about 1.2 million beneficiaries, 1.2 million poor people that will receive impact based off of this game. Now, this is just one type of game, development practitioner game. But we also are going to make other types of games, specifically beneficiary-focused games. So let's think of an example. Let's say we go to Kenya, and we want to do a game about child nutrition, teaching mothers what's best to feed your children and what are the consequences of feeding them nutritious food and unnutritious food. And through that game, if we pilot it in Kenya, Kenya has a population of about 43 million. And of those 43 million, 80% have the ability to play a game on a basic feature phone. And so through that kind of a game, we could reach much more than 1.2 million beneficiaries in a year.
So thank you, Caroline. I'll talk a little bit about our team and mentor. So here's a video of our team members. And Grid serves a niche market of gaming solution with the development role. It's a very new idea that combines both gaming and development together. So in other words, the holistic knowledge of this field doesn't exist. So student expertise range from computer science, engineering, public policy, fine arts to music, take part in different roles in our team. And having students like us in the team gives us 2 benefits. The first one, it ensures an approach to the problem with fresh perspective. And second, more importantly, it gives us the opportunity to reduce the cost of development, as students are so eager to take part in such innovative ventures. And then next, I will talk about my mentor. So our mentor profile is just as diverse as our team profile. We have people from World Bank, Google, and Elo School agree to be our mentor. So during the content development of pilot game, we meet with the World Bank mentors on a weekly basis to seek for guidance in order to produce the best solution we can have.
All right, and just going off of that, the grid model, as June just told you, is based on 3 pillars: are the students, the client, and the mentors. The students, like you heard, drive low the cost of man hours, the cost of game development. The client is not only heavily involved in the content development, but actually helps us identify challenges that can be simulated with a video game. So because half of our team is in development is actually, we're part of the development community, we're able to identify the need for the product. And then we have the mentors who are there for quality assurance, but also networking opportunities for future games. Within Randomania, we were designing Randomania, and already we have a demand for 2 other games. What is unique about us is that we are pricing these games at 1/10 of what our competitors are pricing it at. Already there are very few competitors out there. There's the Sears Games Initiative, Sears Games Interactive, and the Games for Change. But they are a for-profit organization, and they do it for the money. We're doing it for the social change. In the international development, there's no slush fund to make these video games as learning tools, so we're going to bring the cost down by that. Our game plan. We have a right now plan. Our right now plan is game development, but we're eventually going to move towards expansion, where we're going to recycle games for subcontracts. So a game that we make for World Bank can then be used for the USAID with a little bit of changes. And we're finally going to move towards specialization and advocacy, because GRID wants to be the agent of change in leveraging the effectiveness of video games as learning tools for international development.
So we're going to talk a little bit about potential inflows and outflows. So for inflows, we've already talked about contracts, like our direct contract we have right now with the World Bank, and then also possibilities of having subcontracts with governments that do these larger development projects. Crowdsourcing is something that we're looking into, competitions such as this one, and also technology competitions like game jams, and then advertisements within our games. So having companies place their logos or their products within our games and generating revenues from that. What would these pay for? What are the outflows? Salaries, office costs, legal fees, and marketing and business development, so that we can get our name out there, find more clients, find more partners, and make more games.
And just going into that a little bit, so just like Caroline said, we have our financials up there for you. Our salaries, office costs, and technology are going to be the big expenses coming forward. We have the years 2014, 17, and 19, but also please notice that our contracts, which is the product itself, is our biggest source of income, and our profits will go from 78,000 all the way up to 304,000 and 317,000 in 2017 and 19, giving us the sustainability that we need to survive as a not-for-profit organization.
What can GRID do for the world with $35,000? So we have already piloted a game based on the two of our audiences, development practitioners and development students, through Randomania. But with $35,000, we would pilot a game for beneficiaries. So the game that I was talking about earlier, Child Nutrition in Kenya, we would pilot that game on a basic feature phone, take it to Kenya, and test it. Now, we're not testing this because we already know games work. We know games can teach people, and they can be experiential learning and very, very, very high quality. But we want to make sure that when we're doing it in Kenya in this different context with these different types of people, how do we do it best? What's the best approach? What kind of images do they respond best to? What kind of language do they respond best to? So with $35,000, we would be able to do that. And what would having this information, what would that do for us? One, it would help us in furthering our own mission and furthering our own seeking of clients, because we would have empirical evidence that would show that games do work, and this is how they work, and this is the best way to do those games. But also, it would be knowledge for the entire development community, because it would show what impact games can have on poverty, and that we should be using games more as learning tools. So we want to talk a little bit about some achievements that we've already had. First of all, we're here today as finalists in the GW Business Plan, so thank you for that. Second of all, as we've mentioned before, we have our pilot game with the World Bank coming out April 28th in Bangladesh at the CEEF workshop, so we're really excited for that. We attended CGIU 2014 in Arizona, and it was just a really great experience networking with all of our fellow peers and all of learning about their commitments and just finding potential partners and clients. And then we've also had some press coverage, which we're pretty excited about. We were featured in GW Today after CGIU, and we've also had an interview with the Washington Post, and that'll hit stands on April 16th.
All right, and that brings us to the very end of our presentation. We want to leave you with 4 key messages. GRID is revolutionizing international development with games. We're teaching the art of development. We're being mentored by a panel of experts. And what is most important, we're hitting at global issues, which is a global agenda, and we have a global demand. In the game of development, I request you to support GRID. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judges.
Thank you very much. What kind of feedback have you had on the game that you've developed already, the one that you're rolling out shortly?
So we've been working with the World Bank on the game. There's a letter right in front of you, which is a letter of endorsement for this very game that we have from the World Bank. It's going to be piloted with the people in Bangladesh on April 28th. And so that's where we're going to get the feedback from the players. But the feedback during content development was not only the fact that this is very important and it's needed, because so far it's all been about toolkits and presentations, and it doesn't really hit at the political, ethical, resource constraints that are needed in development, but also the fact that this can be expanded so much more. The horizon can be expanded across. So right now we're just doing it on designing an impact evaluation. Already the World Bank wants to do one on implementing an impact evaluation, and then maybe one on monitoring a project and everything. So it's like the canvas is just spreading for us, and we're really, really excited about that.
You mentioned impact evaluation, and so I'm curious if you can talk us through how you would measure the impact of both types of games for the development practitioners from the World Bank, so those 150, and really showing that there's a benefit to the beneficiaries of those programs, but also with this large number of people who might be users of the game who are end-user beneficiaries themselves. How do you track that impact, and what are you looking for as the impact to attribute that it's to your game and not any of the other trainings that they get from the World Bank or other institutions?
Scott, I'm really excited that you brought that question up, because, I mean, we're passionate about randomized control trials, and one thing that we're trying to do with the World Bank right now is that this game towards Kenya, so World Bank already has an ongoing impact evaluation. As you may know, impact evaluations are very, very difficult, are very expensive to implement. And so yes, the counterfactual, we would want to associate our impact, the causal impact, with our game. But there's an opportunity that has come up with this Kenya game, and that is that they're going to overlay it on top of an ongoing impact evaluation. So we will actually be, and this will actually be one of the first games that will have its impact empirically evaluated by the World Bank as a part of an ongoing study within Kenya and Uganda, most probably. So yeah, I mean, we're excited about that. And then there's always that qualitative analysis that goes behind it, which also goes. But rigorously, we're very excited about that RCT that's coming up.
Thank
you. One word I didn't hear, which your concept is a game. One word I haven't heard so far is fun. And in my mind, at least, and I'm looking for your response, of course, is it seems like a very competitive area. It's not easy. Everyone's developing games. How do you plan to compete? I mean, everyone likes to have a nice social impact, but at the end of the day, they're only going to play if it's fun.
I'm just going to go on that, and then maybe Mohammed can just go off of that. One thing that's fun in this whole idea, and honestly, like, development practitioners are relatively boring people, so anything can be fun. I mean, just having a screen is fun for them and everything. So, I mean, when we took this to the World Bank, they had a lot of fun, even with this. So, yeah, I mean, one thing we're trying to do is we did this fun activity of saying, oh, you know, we're going to name the characters after people who are famous, or we're going to put in your study as part of the link to the World Bank game. If you know, I mean, if you get involved with this, or if you play our game or something like that. So we're trying to bring that in, but we're also bringing in the fun in the competitive nature of playing into the game. And I think I'm going to let Mohammed elaborate on that a little.
Just to clarify, when you're saying against competitors in terms of developing the game, or were you saying
like Pogo and Candy Crush and all those games that my wife plays?
So those target a completely different audience than what we are going for. Like, we're not going to be able to compete with EA, but at the same time, EA is not making games about impact evaluations. So we mentioned the three big names in terms of the social games, one of them Games for Change, and one competing against that, as stated previously, was the cost of it. So of course, we need to make sure the game is enjoyable to play and feels right when you're playing it. And one of the reasons I really like this one is that you get to make decisions throughout the entire game. Because for me personally, when you play a game, the thing I like to see is that the game's responsive, that when I do something, the game changes in some way. For example, if I play Mario and I press A, Mario jumps, and that feels good. At the same time, if I make a decision and I immediately see this had a consequence on the story, had a consequence on the progression of this conference, that feels really good. So of course, we go through like testing phase, as with most games, to make sure to get the feedback saying, does this feel right? Am I bored here, or am I actually having an enjoyable experience?
And our fun in this one was that we made the minister bald. I mean, that was like our way of having a little bit of fun with the minister.
I'd like to piggyback on that question a little bit. And your target audience, because I was a little bit confused about that, is it other NGOs? Is it the local populace? Explain that to me, because that was never clear to me.
Right. So go ahead.
So our target audiences, we kind of have three. So for different types of games. So for this game, it's a development practitioner focused game. So that's people here in Washington working in the World Bank, working in NGOs that are implementing these types of projects. So that's one audience. Second audience is development students like ourselves here at GW. We're trying to get skills and trying to learn about development, so these games could do that. And third is this beneficiary type community. So the poor people out in these developing countries that could play these games and could bring awareness to them. You know, we're taking something like, maybe you have a pamphlet about, you know, like we said, child nutrition, and you could hand somebody in Kenya, and maybe it's translated into Swahili so they can read it, and they're probably not going to read it because it's not exciting. It's a pamphlet, and you know, what do we do with pamphlets? We throw them away. So this is a way to get them interacting and working through something so that they're learning the knowledge, but they're having fun while they're doing it. It's not just a piece of paper.
Thank you.
Can you speak to sort of a little bit more to the multiple lives of the game? Because it seems like it's a lot of work to develop a game that the World Bank will use with 150 people, and then you move on to the new game and it just sort of sits there. So within the bank, and then are you allowed to use that for distribution, and what's the licensing arrangement with other users of those games that you've already developed for another
That's
client?
a great question, Scott. I like your questions. So, I mean, like what I would like to say to that is, so one thing that we made sure when the World Bank was signing this contract with us was that the game and the copyrights to the artwork and everything remains with Grid, so that we made this very clear that we would be able to recycle it. So the contract, I'm not going to go into the legalities of it, but the contract really says that we're customizing the game for them, and it's not like we're making the game. So it's not a World Bank game, it's a Grid game at the end of the day. So we've always kept that door open to recycle it and to again use it for other agencies. For instance, the Elliott School already wants to use the impact evaluation game as a skills course, as a complement to a skills course that they want to do. So yeah, I mean, and then we also want to...
And would they pay you for that? Would the Elliott School and the other institutions pay you
Yeah,
for that?
of course, yeah, because it is Grid property, and the World Bank wants to, recycle it as the game in its similar shape, because it's 150 people this time, but they do these workshops across the world every quarter. So it's actually going to go to Bangladesh, and right after that, it's going to South Korea. So I mean, it keeps.
And they would pay you each time for that as well, or they have?
No, I mean, because this time we weren't registered as a company yet. We're waiting for that, but yeah. So I mean, that was something. This time it was an individual contract, so we just got it up and running. It was just something, because again, piggybacking for us for this game, it wasn't the money as much as the fact that the credibility of it, the stamp of World Bank being on our product.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.